Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and let's go back and break down Marvel's Loki Season 1, Episode 2, The Variant. Ahead of Loki Season 2, we are doing this Loki Season 1 rewatch, and we were able to find even more details and Easter eggs. So let's check this out with a fresh perspective, because nothing matters, nothing has any consequence. You should dance while you still can. All right, we open hearing some Renaissance music playing, but you know what? It's a fake out, because this ain't Elizabethan England. It's just a Ren Fair in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 1985, an important year, because this really is a nexus year in our reality. It's when Back to the Future released, and historically that really was a huge moment in pop culture that people started thinking about time travel constantly, because that movie was so popular. Even though it wasn't the first time travel story ever told. I know, H.G. Wells existed, but Back to the Future was a moment that mattered to most Americans, at least. Also, in the comics, Oshkosh is home to Wendell Vaughn, aka Quasar, and that series was written by who? Mark Gruenwald, and Mobius's comic likeness was based on Mark Gruenwald's appearance. Hunter C20 shows up with some Minutemen, and they're immediately called out by this woman played by comedian Kate Bertland.
What's going on? You guys aren't dressed right. Some of us need this, you know.
And I really love how they use so many comedians on this show. It really drives home the fact that everything the TVA is doing is all a farce designed by He Remains, and he's just laughing at all of us. He's using these comedic actors because he wants the funniest looking and sounding puppets. Everything about this is meant to disorient. A Renaissance fair is conceptually one time period masquerading as another. A big cosplay, a big fake. So it just makes it more difficult for these time cops to spot anachronistic items. And they're further disoriented when they track the Loki variant to this green tent with a golden sign out front, Loki's signature colors, and the audio recording intro for the Ren Fair show starts playing loudly, which when you think about it, must have been pre-recorded by Sylvie, meaning she's in GarageBand putting this together. Anyway, a lot of preparation went into this. Yes, Hero, Bonnie Tyler's 1984 hit. This song was recorded for the movie Footloose, which is Peter Quill's favorite movie. But also this narration foreshadows the events ahead for Loki and Sylvie. Will evil prevail, or are we holding out for a hero? Either or. Phrasing it this way just makes it sound like evil will prevail if a hero shows up. And the most active protagonist in these 6 episodes is Sylvie, and she does make a decision that brings danger to the multiverse. Sylvie pairs her consciousness with C20 by touching her temple with green magic. The way she does this looks similar to Wanda performing her illusion curse on the Avengers in Age of Ultron, but here the spell is mind control, something our Loki could only do with a scepter containing the Mind Stone. So this sets up what we later learn from Mobius, that Loki variants can have different powers. The song lyrics of "Where have all the good men gone and where are all the gods?" just a little hint that this god is a woman, and also perhaps the hero these Minutemen need to free them from their illusion of life at the TVA. And in fact, we see Sylvie in C20's memories in a future episode. So Sylvie picks up the Tempad, and its display has options for Time Door, Ms. Minutes, Settings, and Directory. So Ms. Minutes is selectable as an option, which means that she could show up whenever and wherever they want, or maybe by tapping this is how you release her to go full kaiju as last resort, like we see in the Loki Season 2 trailer. So back in the TVA, Loki reads Wake, that's Mobius's jet ski magazine that we saw in the end credits of last episode. Season 2 will show Mobius's origin in Cleveland, Ohio in 2022 as a jet ski salesman. Loki asks Ms. Minutes,
"Are you recording or are you alive?"
Sort of both.
And then he tries to swat her, and then tries to hit her with the magazine, and she hops around. If you listen closely, her shoes are making noises as she connects with these surfaces.
Watch it. Hey, quit it.
Again, I explored what Miss Minutes is in a recent video. She's not just a hologram. I believe she is sentient temporal radiation. And I'm sorry for all the past times I said temporal. I just love shrimp tempura. But from here forward, I'm going to say it correctly. Temporal, 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 temporal. I'm sorry. But I think my favorite Easter egg in all of Loki is that there is a multiple choice question on his computer screen. Thanos has 2 apples. He eats both, but realizes he wants more. He goes back in time 20 minutes and eats the apples again. Does this mean that apples will not have existed in the timeline he left? A, no, because time is constantly happening. B, the question doesn't matter because the branch cannot change another time branch. C, Thanos would have been hungry prior because the grandfather paradox already accounted for the change in matter before its move. So all 3 options reflect explanations of time travel we've heard in movies before. B is currently selected on this screen, which would align with Mobius's logic about timelines being unaffected by what happens in other branches. When Thanos goes back in time to eat the apples again, he's created a new branch timeline, etc. However, episode 6 of this series will prove that all of the above are actually correct. For Kang, time is constantly happening, and Thanos' hunger and his eating of apples aren't linked by cause and effect. Like the drawer full of Infinity Stones, there are countless apples for him to eat in infinite permutations, so that's really why it's no. But answer C, the grandfather paradox, suggests that Thanos' hunger after eating 2 apples was a result of reality erasing the apple matter from his stomach to justify his need to go back in time to eat them in the past, making a closed loop, which despite all the talk of branched timelines in this series and in Avengers Endgame, that is actually how Kang sees it. It's a predestined loop where even the act of time travel is part of the preordained script. But all of these are presented as a choice, which is weird. All of the above is not an option here, making this test a trick. Like Loki's living CAPTCHA test in episode 1, this is really a Voight-Kampff test to measure how indoctrinated Loki is becoming into the TVA orthodoxy. Yes, I'm obsessed with this multiple choice question, and actually, I interviewed a member of the VFX team who wrote out the script and got specific notes from the producers of the Loki series on which words to change. Go watch that video because it's fascinating how these Easter eggs actually come into existence. I've talked about this too long, but I will leave you with this reference to the apples. When we first meet He Who Remains in the finale, what is he eating? An apple. In Loki season 2, what is Mobius's favorite type of pie from McDonald's? Even more than the key lime pie he eats in the TVA automat? Apple pie. I'm telling you, apples extremely important. Because back in Doctor Strange in 2016, the object that was used to demonstrate the way time progression and time reversion works was an apple. Okay, we see some more of Loki's variants.
The TVA has pruned a lot of these guys, almost more than any other variant.
We could see a blue frost giant version of Loki labeled L1247, but that's just on the wide shot, and close up it's L6792. There's a cyclist Loki who just won the Tour de France. That in close up is L1247. L6792 in close up is a big beastly Loki that looks like it's straight out of the pages of a D&D handbook. L8914 has a big beard and big black horns that look a lot more goat-like. And then an armored warrior Loki, L7803. Mobius says that each Loki can have different powers, and Loki clarifies the difference between illusion projection and duplication casting. Illusion projection depicts a detailed image from outside oneself, which is perceptible in the outside world, like when Loki projected the form of Steve Rogers over himself. Duplication casting involves recreating an exact facsimile of the body as it is in its current state, being a true holographic mirror of its molecular structure. So that would be anytime Loki tricks people like Thor with a double of himself, or when he did this to all those Germans in the 2012 Avengers. So at the crime scene of the Ren Fair, Loki delivers a monologue.
We have a saying in Asgard, where there are wolf's ears, wolf's teeth are near.
He's alluding to wolf references as a nod to Fenrir or Fenris in Marvel. That's the wolf figure that Loki is often associated with in mythology. But as we learn in episode 3, Loki's connections with Norse culture do have an authentic form of music. Because for Loki, it is just impossible to sing inauthentically. This is kind of a Rick and Morty thing, where there's a younger form of Rick that anytime he sings, that's the only way he can express his true self. And obviously a lot of the writers on this show, including Mike Waldron, wrote on Rick and Morty before this. Now on the chronomonitor screen back in the TVA, we see the branch being pruned, and other past branch locations tick past, including Nidavellir, that's the Armory Realm in Infinity War, where Eitri helped Thor forge Stormbreaker, and Sakaar, of course, the trash planet that we saw in Thor Ragnarok. The Timekeeper statues in Renslayer's office have the same kintsugi cracked pattern that He Remains Citadel has, suggesting that Renslayer may have been that 4th Timekeeper statue that was broken in the lobby. Either way, there is a connection between Renslayer and He Remains /Kang. Throughout this scene, we hear this haunting theremin music, a song that was actually composed by Tchaikovsky and performed in this case by Clara Rockmore. The statues of these 3 Timekeepers once again watch over Renslayer just like they do in the courtroom, and again, the Timekeeper of Ast is the one that stands directly behind her when she's at her desk. Ast's arms are outstretched, whereas Zorth and Vanth hold hourglasses. There's also this cool hourglass pattern on the black doors leading into the office. Mobius notices the San Diego snow globe.
Where'd you get that one, the snow globe? I love those. I don't remember bringing back that case.
Renslayer shrugs this off, saying Mobius isn't the only analyst working for her, but between that, him not remembering that he left ring stains on the side table, and not remembering the pen he uses from Franklin D. Roosevelt High School, it's just clear the TVA is messing with his memories and controlling them. In episode 6, we realize that Renslayer has this pen because it's where she used to work before she was brought to the TVA, and we actually see a bunch of these pens on her desk. Mobius whistles for Loki to follow him like a dog, and then they bicker as they walk through these identical hallways. It's clear they use the same set over again when they round the corner. Totally parallels what we see in Severance. This is just kind of a symbolic workplace labyrinth that any white-collar worker just has to go through every morning as they trudge to their cubicle. Mobius says,
Because I see a scared little boy shivering in the cold, and you kind of feel bad for that ice runt.
which I love this line because as a frost giant, Loki shouldn't be affected by cold, but he was really raised by the Asgardians, so he's always felt like an outsider. This elevator ride into the depths of the archives of the TVA, very trippy. It was actually shot in the Atlanta Marriott Marquis Hotel. It was dressed up with these timekeeper statues and TVA archive bookshelves. The number 372 appears behind Loki, could be a nod to the Mighty Thor issue number 372, which featured an appearance of the TVA. Loki goes through a report of Sylvie's destruction of a Central California oil field. And this is a different oil field than the one she destroyed in Oklahoma in episode 1, but again, she took the reset charges there. Sylvie is actually listed in the file as Sylvie Laufey-Dotter, meaning daughter of Laufey, like Laufey's son, but Loki's so annoyed by what he sees as just a busy work task that he doesn't register this important info yet. At the reference desk, the librarian is listening to Bach's Orchestral Suite number 3 in D major.
Hello?
Which is actually a really cool Easter egg. It's a nod to the movie Seven, when Detectives Mills and Somerset are in the library looking for info on their killer. Loki director Kate Herron actually called out this moment at a panel when she was asked about influences for the show. She said, quote, stylistically, I would say me and DP Autumn Durald were really inspired by a lot of noir films, and you can see that in our lighting and how we approached it. Seven is a very heavy influence. There's a little reference to Seven in episode 2, a little needle drop, which I'm sure fans of that film will recognize instantly. Now the floors behind Loki are labeled SYF, LK3, and 2W1. They correspond to the floors we saw in the elevator, and actually Mobius taps this button again in the latest trailer for Loki season 2. So I guess they're gonna go back to that part of the archives. The librarian tells Loki that all files pertaining to the creation of the TVA, the beginning of time, and the end of time are classified. The origin questions hopefully will get answered with Victor Timely in 1893 in season 2. Loki reads a report on the destruction of Asgard as seen in Thor Ragnarok. It's listed as a class 7 apocalypse, total planetary destruction, and he sheds a tear as he reads casualties 9,719. Remember, this Loki isn't the Loki who lived through the Ragnarok event, so he's feeling this all for the first time. And we see the words codename Revengers, which is the team name Thor proposed to Valkyrie in that movie. Loki sees that there was 0 variance energy detected, which gives him the idea that Sylvie is hiding out in historical apocalyptic timeline events. He rushes to tell Mobius about his hunch, destroying Mobius' salad in the process and stealing Casey's Boku fruit juice, which is another discontinued drink from the 90s, like the Justa soda.
It's my undeniable right as a man of the 90s to quench my thirst in my own way. I want a Boku.
Loki says that he could go right before an apocalyptic event and do whatever, and the TVA won't detect it because everything gets wiped, and he uses the example of pushing Hulk off the Rainbow Bridge, which actually happens in Ragnarok, though he doesn't know it, when Hulk fights that wolf, Fenris. Loki wants to test this theory, but Mobius fears he'll stab him in the back.
Loki, I've studied almost every moment of your entire life. You've literally stabbed people in the back like 50 times.
We saw one of those times when Loki killed poor Coulson in Avengers 2012. R.I.P. Coulson. Or maybe the LMD is still alive, if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. will just be confirmed as canon. This video is sponsored by Helix Sleep. Their Labor Day sale is running now, and it's a great time to update your mattress. You can get 25% off your purchase for a limited time. Check out the Helix site for more details. I'm not gonna pretend this is the first time you've heard me say that, and with good reason. I've been sleeping on a Helix mattress for 2 years now, and it's great. It's the best mattress I've ever owned. Finding the perfect mattress can be difficult, but Helix's sleep quiz makes it so easy. You just take the quiz and Helix finds the perfect mattress for you. I wanted a medium firm mattress with lumbar support that sleeps cool, and I got matched with a Dusk Luxe Helix mattress. And get this, there is no fiberglass in Helix mattresses, so you won't lose any sleep over what you're sleeping on. Helix delivers your mattress right to your door with free shipping in the US. The mattress comes rolled up in a box and is super easy to set up yourself. Helix has a 100-night sleep trial, so you get more than 3 months to make sure you love your mattress. Helix mattresses have a 10-year warranty. Helix even offers financing options and flexible payment plans, so a great night's sleep is never far away. I love my Helix mattress. I think you would too. So if you're looking for a new bed, check out Helix Sleep. Their Labor Day sale is running now. It's a perfect time to upgrade your sleep with 25% off a Helix mattress plus 2 free pillows. Click the link below or go to helixsleep.com/rockstars to find out more about this limited time offer. They visit Pompeii in 79 AD, moments before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Loki's theory is proven correct when he raises a ruckus by releasing his fellow horned friends, some goats, and tells everyone that he's from the future, which produces no variance energy, no branch timeline. Back in the TVA, Mobius explains his fascination with jet skis.
In the early 1990s, for a brief, shining moment, there was a beautiful union of form and function, which we call the the jet ski.
Even though that scene of Mobius selling jet skis in season 2 is reportedly in 2022, Mobius is a guy still stuck in the past. He's thinking about the 90s, he's a nostalgic. And there's some symbolism in his love for jet skis as they travel on no painted lane or path. They're largely unregulated and pretty accessible to anyone compared to motorcycles or airplanes. They really are the vehicle of freedom. Mobius remembers the kablooey gum from episode 1 that Sylvie left behind at one of her crime scenes and uses that to narrow down the time that she is hiding in, since it was only sold on Earth between 2047 and 2051, and Loki searches through possible apocalyptic disasters during that narrow 4-year window.
It's not the climate disaster of 2048 or the tsunami of 2051.
Let's go.
2050, the extinction of the swallow. Is that a thing?
Completely screwed up the ecosystem.
Krakatoa erupted in 2049 as well. No kablooey.
That's a lot of boom booms! Krakatoa, remember, is the Indonesian volcano that erupted in 1883 and covered half the world in ash. So He Who Remains has definitely scheduled a lot of apocalyptic events for the future. And I've always wondered if it's because he knew there existed one timeline where Earth was destroyed by Tiamat's emergence. So Loki zeroes in on the Rockstars disaster when a Category 8 hurricane hits Haven Hills, Alabama in 2050. Now, our current hurricane classification system only goes up to Category 5, so this means at some point in the future, meteorologists have to adjust to keep up with the increasing disaster power. In this report, you can see that the entire town was annihilated, 10,835 people. So Rockstars would be a subsidiary of Roxxon, the recurring MCU energy conglomerate. So at some point, like many evil companies, they just take over all of retail. We get this amazingly timed one-shot sequence where Mobius gives Loki back his daggers, which are immediately snatched back by Hunter B-15.
Telling you actually help us catch this variant, and who knows, my friend?
Well, good enough for a face-to-face with the timekeepers?
I didn't say that. One step at a time. Just in case.
Absolutely not.
Now, how do they time out the blocking of this? We can actually see the moment Tom Huddleston signals Wunmi Mosaku to enter by raising his voice on the words, "Timekeepers."
The face with the timekeepers?
I didn't say that. One step at a time. Just in case.
Absolutely not.
By hearing the words "Timekeepers," that's how Wunmi knows when to enter to perfectly time that grab. And then we cut from this constantly rotating shot of Hunter B-15 outlining the mission to the Rockstars billboard of an idyllic paradise, kind of like the Back to the Future Lion Estates billboard that in the 1985 timeline, this entrance is just covered in graffiti. But here, in the billboard, they leave in the Roxxon smokestacks, spouting pollution into the air, surrounding this beautiful beach city, not caring one bit about the optics. And then with the billboard being destroyed, we see the direct effects of that pollution, this climate disaster, destroying the billboard and the entire town behind it. Some fossil fueled powered buildings completely explode, telling us that even in 2050, they were still powering all these buildings with gas lines, meaning that fire is causing just as much damage alongside the wind, the rain, and the flooding. As a Florida kid, I can tell you, while floodwater is definitely the most destructive part of a hurricane, structural fires are no joke either. They're a big thing, from gas lines being damaged, pilot lights going out, appliances just being left on by mistake when the power's otherwise out, no one being home to catch the fires before they can spread. Yeah, fires are really bad too. We see a hologram of a happy Roxxon employee glitching. She is caught in her own loop, just like all of these characters are. There are 2 buses parked out front. This is a destination for all these people. They were brought here as a safe space to ride out the storm. They thought they'd be safe. Mobius makes Loki walk in front of him, so there would be no way Loki could stab him in the back, just like he was worried about earlier. Once they're inside, Loki uses magic to dry his clothes, clearly relishing the fact that he's now outside of the TVA, he can perform his old tricks again, but this also signals to the viewer that sorcery in this place is possible, letting us know that Sylvie is especially dangerous, and that her sorcery may already be in effect. Hunter B-15 says Loki needs to stay with her during the mission, pointing to the hierarchy of the TVA, and reminding us of that Hunters and Analysts working in tandem poster from episode 1. Sylvie watches them from the security cameras, and the screen in the upper right shows the helper robot still rolling. Loki and B-15 come upon this guy, who says that he's buying azaleas right now because it's a hurricane sale? A hurricane sale? That's how often it happens? Like Rockstars is now playing into it? But really, this guy is possessed by Sylvie's consciousness, and when B-15 touches him, she transfers into her. Just like Loki did at the start of the episode, Sylvie is really all doing this, monologuing to Loki to stall for time. They're more alike than they are different. Mobius finds Hunter C-20 in the store's break room, which has a poster that reads, "A great place to work, a great place to shop, everything you need for happiness." Yeah, corporate propaganda, it is everywhere. C-20 just keeps repeating, "It's real, it's real, it's real," and "I want to go home," sounding very much like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, convincing herself that there's no place like home. She apparently gave up where the timekeepers are, so Sylvie is finally in a position to carry out her plan to bomb the sacred timeline and take these three out. Sylvie transfers her consciousness to the employee Randy, and Loki looks down at B-15. He's worried about her. They've really come a long way. And I love how Randy has this electronic name badge that still says, "Welcome, can I help you?" It's a cool world detail because it shows how Roxxon just uses their employees as walking advertisements for discounts and sales. They found yet another way to make money in the year 2050. B-15 wakes up in a similar shell-shocked state as C-20, and then Sylvie transfers her consciousness from Randy to this big boy trucker looking dude. Loki gets tossed around, landing on the ground in that same position he did in Thor Ragnarok.
I have been falling for 30 minutes!
But as Trucker Sylvie punches that TV behind Loki, you can actually see another really cool detail from this episode. The TV reads Storm of the Millennium, and it actually lists the storm as a Category 9, meaning it was a Category 9 before it made landfall and became a Category 8. It was even worse than we thought. And look closely at the storm path. It was really two storms converging, a perfect storm, which I think parallels symbolically these two Loki variants as two separate deadly storms combining together into the perfect storm of chaos in an otherwise orderly timeline. All of this is an elaborate dance between two star-crossed variants, and Sylvie presents herself here, setting the record straight and taking some wind out of Loki's sails.
This isn't about you.
Yes, it isn't all about just one Loki. It's about both of them working together, and it echoes what the Ancient One told Doctor Strange as he began to understand the concept of the multiverse.
It's not about you.
Now, Sylvie ends this episode by blowing up the sacred timeline, dropping these stolen reset charges throughout history, creating chaos in a bunch of branches. Renslayer's screen shows a bunch of historical dates and important locations. What's interesting is we never really see the consequences of this bombing. I theorized that Kang might have wanted Sylvie to bomb random parts of the sacred timeline so that she would feel committed to the pot to follow through on her plan to completely destroy it in the finale. But let's break down what we see. On Chrono Monitor ticker, you can see Nowhere. That's a severed celestial head where the Guardians of the Galaxy set up shop in Volume 3 and the Holiday Special, and we learned from Volume 3 it is actually mobile. There's no date listed, but maybe this altered when that Celestial was beheaded. Next to that is Barcelona, Spain, and underneath that, Niflheim. That's one of the 9 Asgardian realms, and where Hela was believed to be exiled, so this could have altered the outcome of Hela invading Asgard or made it happen sooner. Then Dartford, England, that's the birthplace of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, so maybe in this timeline they both went into banking instead of becoming musicians. And then on Renslayer's screen, we see August 3rd, 1522, Phang Nga, Vietnam. This would have been right before the Europeans arrived in Vietnam, so maybe the reset charge altered the course of colonial history. Then March 31st, 1492, Lisbon, Portugal. This is the year of Columbus's Atlantic voyage, so maybe that was altered somehow. April 23rd, 2301, Vormir. Vormir, of course, the resting place of the Soul Stone, seen in Infinity War and Endgame. Any change to Vormir would be potentially catastrophic, considering all the people have been thrown off that cliff. So maybe this timeline change explains why Red Skull used to be played by Hugo Weaving, but is now played by Ross Marquand. Then we see October 25th, 1551, Thornton, USA. This might be a typo because there is no Thornton in the United States, but there is a Thornton in Colorado. Colorado wasn't founded until 1876. Thornton, wherever it is, would be named after the god Thor. November 22nd, 1999, Cookeville, USA. That's in Tennessee. February 16th, 2004, Asgard. So this would be 8 years before the events of the first Thor film. Maybe Thor and Odin died in battle and Loki ascended to the throne. October 3rd, 1390, Rome, Italy. There's a lot of wars going on in Italy during that time, a lot of coups and arranged marriages for power. August 13th, 1984, Sakaar Teo. Sakaar, of course, the trash planet from Ragnarok. Teo is the name of Sakaar's star system. 1984 would have been about 23 years before the events of Thor Ragnarok, so maybe this is during their reign of the past champion, like one of those 4 champions on the Grandmaster's Tower. February 2nd, 1808, Barrick, Colombia. So this would have been during the French invasion of Spain, which led to an increase in loyalty to the king. Maybe this changed the outcome of that. July 17th, 1708, Porvoo, Finland. At that time, Finland was a battleground between Russia and Sweden in the Great Northern War. Porvoo was sacked and burned by the Russians, so that could have been another potential apocalyptic event that Sylvie could have hid inside of. December 27th, 1382, Ego, as in Ego the Living Planet, Peter Quill's dad. So maybe in this altered timeline, he mated with someone else and successfully passed his genetic godliness along to someone else like he'd always wanted. October 13th, 1982, Titan. So remember Titan? That's a planet Thanos grew up on, the ruins of which he fought the Avengers in Infinity War. 1982 would be about 30 years before his first appearance in the MCU, so maybe now the planet was spared and Thanos never embarked on his stone quest. September 21st, 1947, New York. This would have been right after the Yankees won the American League pennant when the Red Sox were eliminated, and right before the Red Sox then hired former Yankees manager Joe McCarthy. I just had to point out that history for you. March 1st, 1984, Tokyo. This would be right at the end of a massive snowfall event in that country that led to 131 deaths, so potentially another apocalyptic event. January 3rd, 51 1 AD Hala? This is the earliest date we see on any of the screens. Hala is the Kree homeworld seen in Captain Marvel, so they're like an ancient civilization. They reached peak evolution years before humanity did, so maybe this altered timeline was the start of their conflict with the Skrulls. August 2nd, 1999, Kingsport, Tennessee. Couldn't find anything important for that, but Eric Jepsen, the actor who played Minuteman number 4, is from Kingsport, so maybe this is just the writers giving him a shout out. September 4th, 1001, Xandar. Xandar is the home of the Nova Corps, seen in Guardians of the Galaxy. This would be right at the start of the Kree-Nova 1,000-Year War. November 23rd, 2005, Beijing, China. This would have been a couple days after George W. Bush attended a church service in Genwashi Church in Beijing. 1903, Madrid, Spain. This one is interesting because Marvel Comics, on this date, Vlad Dracula created a Nexus event and was arrested by the TVA in Madrid. So maybe this somehow ties into the events of Blade. And above the time doors, you can also see Portland in 2004, and then Jotunheim, Land of the Frost Giants, which is Loki's home realm. Okay, that's a lot of them. The episode ends with Renslayer springing into action and grabbing her staff, ready to protect the TVA and the Timekeepers amidst this chaos, but on her helmet, you can already see A23, which of course is a nod to Avengers number 23, Ravonna Renslayer's first appearance when she was introduced as the romantic interest of Kang the Conqueror. Now this detail features prominently in episode 4, but this Kang clue was right here in plain sight back in episode 2. The closing credits were updated on the casting by credit to include photos of Loki in his TVA variant jacket and a photo of Sylvie in her hood. So our re-breakdown of episode 3 is coming next, and it's going to be interesting to revisit Lamentis 1, because I'm pretty sure it's connected to the Kree mining colonies and the Annihilation War event that could play a role in the Marvel's film. Subscribe to all 3 channels of the New Rockstars network, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars, and subscribe to New Rockstars for breakdowns of everything Loki related. Thanks for watching, bye.